Okay, let's talk about AP exams. They are around the corner. I know it seems like, oh my gosh, how can it be May already? But, well, it's not May. We're getting so close. So we want to make sure that you know what to expect, especially if this is your child's first year taking an AP exam. I've got some really startling news, and then I've got some tips to help you with everything. So I pulled up last year's scores. And don't be confused by the fact that the scores are 1 through 5. They consider anything over a 3, quote, passing. But that is super misleading because I can tell you the top tier schools, they're looking for 4s and 5s. And you can go to any school's website and in their search bar, put AP exams and automatically it'll come up, it'll show AP exams and it'll say, if you got this score, you can eliminate this class. And I can tell you, there are a lot of schools where it has to be a 4 or a 5, despite that misleading information that, oh, a 3 is passing, you're getting credit for it. That is not always the case. So please, educate yourself, educate your child. Look at the schools your child is looking at. And if you know already that you're planning on your child going to a top tier school, just know they need 4s and 5s, period. End of conversation. And you might be thinking, well, I don't think APs are really a big deal because we're just looking at state schools. Your flagship state school, your bigger state schools, your more competitive state schools, they are also looking at AP scores, especially if they're test optional for ACT and SAT. They make it sound like, oh, we're test optional and we're going to take this holistic view. I can tell you already, I had a conversation with someone in admissions at Ohio State 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, he said, if they're not submitting ACT and SAT, they better have test scores. Otherwise, they're unlikely to be on our list. So you definitely want to make sure you know what colleges are looking for, because I feel like it's so vague. And, a lot of families are posting in other groups on Facebook about how it's become such a lottery and, my kid has good grades and so forth, but they didn't get accepted to their top choices. But there's so many components, and one of them are these AP exams and these AP scores. So I'm going to give you some what I consider startling facts. English language. Only 56% score a 3, 4, or 5. Only 56%, half the kids. But more startling is only 30% score a 4 or a 5. So that means 70% of the kids taking English Lang are not getting credit for it. 70%. They've been learning English their entire lives. 70% not getting credit for it. U.S. history. I mean, come on. How long have we been telling kids what has gone on in U.S. history? And I'm going to tell you why these numbers are what they are, because I know why they are what they are. U.S. history, AP U.S. history, only 47% score a 3 or higher. Less than half get a passing grade on AP U.S. history, and they have been learning about history their entire lives. Only 25% get a 4 or a 5. A quarter of the students, 3/4 of them are not getting credit. Or if they're looking at a really selective school, they're not getting credit for it. So what is the disconnect? I'm going to tell you. Most students approach subjects that they're familiar with, English, history, those types of subjects, with, I've already learned a lot of this. I know what to do. I've gotten good grades in the past. That's why I'm taking this as an AP version. So history, for example, when kids are learning history, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, it's all about memorizing. Who did this? Where were they at? What year was it? Why did it happen? Maybe. And what happened? Those types of things. But when you get into the AP, it digs into that why did it happen? And even more importantly, who did it affect? How did it change things? How did it change the social aspects of the country, the community, the world? How did it change the political views of the country, the world, the different pieces amongst that? How did it change the culture? How did it change communities? How did it change education? What were the impacts to different groups within their society? So they have to look at it in a completely different light. And while teachers might tell them this, they often don't drill down on it so that students take their notes in a way that they're going to get that information. Instead of just documenting the details or the facts, really put the analyzation into their notes. So when they're studying, they're reviewing those types of things. And we have some tools that we work with students to help them. There's some things online like spice charts, we use those. But I'm going to tell you, game changer. We had a student a few years ago. He didn't have room in his high school schedule to take AP US History. It didn't fit. He was taking some other AP classes. He had certain things he wanted to do, and the time schedule didn't permit for AP US History. And he's like, but I kind of like history. I'm pretty good at it. Like, I'd really like to take it. And I said, well, you can take the test without taking the class. And he was shocked. Wait, you can take the AP test without taking the class? Absolutely. Well, how do I do it? You just sign up for it, and guess what? Come on in. We'll give you some prep for it. We prepped him 4 times. 4 times he came in. We showed him. Now, granted, he was a really good student, but a lot of you have really good students too. And so we prepped him 4 times. And basically what we did is we said, here are the different sections they're testing on. Here's what's most important. And you need to look at it from the who did it affect? How did it change things? What were the implications in, politics, in society, in education, in the culture? Like, how did it affect all of that? And he took the testing and scored a 4. I find it interesting that AP Chinese, AP Japanese all scored higher. Those students all scored higher than AP Lang. We've been teaching English all these years, and yet they're not scoring well. A couple other shockers for me, and I guess it goes along the same lines, U.S. government and politics. And so many kids take AP U.S. government. They're like, I'm good in history. I'll do great. 49% scored a 3 or above. 49%. 51% are not getting even a 3. And only 24%, again, we're down under a quarter of students are going to show these scores to colleges. They're going to get credit for these scores in colleges. And that is shocking to me. And again, it's because students, and I use this example for a lot of standardized test taking. I use it for ACT and SAT because nothing could be more true than this. Kids have been taught a certain way all throughout life. In most schools, students have 7 to 10 days of instruction on a particular topic. A couple days before the test, they get a study guide. They review the study guide. Maybe it's homework. They fill it out. They're filling in blanks, basically. They come back the next day. They go through the study guide, and then they're tested on that same information with little variation. And so they do well. They're 4.0 students. They're 4.5 students. They're 4.9 students. And they're scoring well below a 30 on their ACT. They're scoring well below a 1300 on their SAT. Why? My kid's a good student. I don't understand. Because imagine you've been driving for 20 years. And when you learned how to drive, the vehicle was an automatic transmission. You have been driving an automatic transmission your entire life. And you show up at a friend's house and suddenly they have an emergency and they're like, oh my gosh, let's take my car. Let's go wherever this emergency is. Here are the keys. You're like, okay, fine. And you get in the car to drive them and it is a stick shift. The fact you've been driving for 20 years means nothing at that moment. Because while the car looks the same from the outside, it starts the same way, it has a steering wheel, a brake pedal, a gas pedal, there's that other pedal down there. And the gear shift moves. And suddenly you're at a loss because you've never practiced that way. So for standardized tests, whether it be ACT, SAT, or now we're talking about AP exams, doing additional practice, learning the correct strategies for taking that test is so important. AP chemistry. I'm very gifted here with an amazing tutor who has a couple of different master's degrees, and they are just exceptional in being able to convey information. And last year, a local high school to us, they had put their AP chemistry teacher on leave, didn't fire her, but she wasn't there teaching either. And that happened in January. And in March, a parent called me outraged when she got a notice from the school that they were going to refund her AP test fee because students haven't had any instruction for the last 2 months. And she asked her son, "What have you been doing?" And he said, "Well, once in a while, we have a sub who knows some chemistry, and so we'll do like a lab, but no one's been teaching AP chemistry, and I've been playing ping pong a lot." And she contacted us and she said, "Do you have a tutor?" And I said, "Yeah, we've got an exceptional tutor." She went back to the school and she said, "This isn't right, and every kid should have this opportunity." Our tutor went to this high school. Now, second semester, zero instruction. This is a full year course, zero instruction in AP chemistry. My tutor went there 14 times over the course of 3.5 weeks. We broke it up, a day, miss a day, and so forth. So over 3.5 weeks in the month of April, tutor was there 14 times. That's it. Not only did he cover all of second semester of AP chemistry, he also did a review for first semester and worked on some very specific test-taking strategies. Over 89% of their students scored a 3 or better, which is amazing. And of that 89%, 85% scored a 4 or 5. There was one kid who scored a 3. Everyone else scored a 4 or 5. It didn't take a whole semester for these kids to learn second semester. They needed to learn how to take the test using the information. So information is valuable, but if you don't know how to use it, it's worthless. So, knowledge is power, but only if you're going to act on it, kind of thing. So I really encourage that if your children are taking AP exams, you really start talking to them about it. What are they doing to prepare? Are they taking any AP exams in class already? Are they learning how to break down this information? And if they're not doing well in class already, they have a B, that is not going to convert into a test score that they're going to be able to use to get into selective schools. So you want to know that now so you can change that, so that you can turn that around. So if you have questions, please drop the word question down below this video and I'll reach out to you. We can chat about it. I think this is an area that we really need to address because I just see such a breakdown, and I see kids working really hard and not getting the achievements they're looking for. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I studied so much for that AP exam and my test score, I don't want to report it to a college." And colleges are looking at these more and more because when you're getting 80,000 applications and you're taking 5%, how do you break down the difference between students? They're looking for those edges. They're looking for those outlying factors that can really separate students. Oh, nope, AP exams, 6 AP exams, 9 AP exams with a 4 or 5. It starts to become cut and dry for them, and it's no longer that lottery we keep hearing about, and there is some basis for the decisions they're making. And I agree, some of it is still a little mysterious, but overall, there are so many components that we can accurately judge where your child's going to fall based on the classes they've taken, the AP exams, ACT, SAT test scores, certain extracurriculars, not all are the same, and different things that they've done, outside of school, so that you can kind of see, is this the type of student Stanford's taking, Yale, Harvard, Georgetown, Boston University, Boston College, and so forth. I mean, we have kids at all of those schools I just named and just about every other selective school out there. And we see the patterns on what they're doing, and we talk to the admission people there. And we're far enough out where it can make a difference for your child to get some AP instruction. Because if you wait until the middle of April, when they're actually doing maybe some real test prep in class, if they're not doing well, it's too late. They're never going to put it together just in those 2 weeks without some outside instruction. So drop the word question down below. Happy to help. And hopefully this has been insightful. I think these test scores are crazy when you're considering subjects like history and English. You're thinking, oh, that should be a no-brainer. You've been doing that your whole life. And yet they struggle the most there because they're not learning how to evaluate the information in a different light. They're still trying to apply the old metrics of just knowing it and not the impact of the information. And, again, putting it to a further test on what was the end result? Why did it occur to begin with? How do we keep this from happening again, and so forth? So drop the word question down below. Happy to help you. And hopefully this has shed some light on AP scores and what you can expect. And I will talk to you soon.